The ClueFinders are on a trip to Egypt to witness the opening of the Tomb of Parabsen along with the Egyptologist Professor Botch and the archaeologist Alistair Lovelace, who I'm sure is totally not the villain, no siree.
This is astounding! Parabsen was believed to be aligned with Set, the ancient Egyptian embodiment of chaos.
Whoever took your professor is up to no good. He wants to unleash the power of Set.
Last time, we took a dive into the ClueFinders' first big adventure in the Mystery of Mathra, wherein the gang were called down to the Numerian rainforest to help uncover the answer to the mystery behind Mathra's return, why it was capturing the animals, and most importantly, rescue Joni's uncle, Dr. Pythagoras, from within the lost city of Numeria. In the end, they discovered the real truth of what was going down, saved both the animals and Dr. Pythagoras, and foiled Limburger's evil plan. So, after dealing with ancient guardians, goo pits, and rings of fire, exactly where would the ClueFinders' next mystery take them? Well, fortunately, it wouldn't take too long for the gang to get that answer, as they would skip across the Atlantic to Egypt and uncover their next mystery in the Puzzle of the Pyramid. In this one, the ClueFinders are on a trip to Egypt to witness the opening of the Tomb of Parabsen along with the Egyptologist Professor Botch and the archaeologist Alistair Lovelace, who I'm sure is totally not the villain, no siree. While scoping inside the tomb, Joni tries on an ancient ring, but it latches itself onto her finger and now she can't get it off. Later that night, as the professor continues examining the tomb, Lovelace arrives with his minions, I know, big shocker, to kidnap the professor and raid all of the artifacts from the tomb. Lovelace's ultimate plan? To unleash and control the power of Set, the Egyptian embodiment of chaos, and conquer the world. When the ClueFinders return to the tomb the next day to tell the professor about the ring, the entire place has been cleaned out. That is, except for one hidden chamber they missed, which contains a mysterious scroll. Thus, the ClueFinders head over to Cairo to find someone who can translate it. Luckily, the group find one person who can do it, a 5,000-year-old antique dealer, Ramses, who explains to them,
Whoever took your professor is up to no good. He wants to unleash the power of Set, the ancient Egyptian embodiment of chaos. Legend has it that the ancients built a mysterious place of power. Those worthy enough to enter would be granted the power needed to stop Set.
So, the ClueFinders must locate this place of power and put a stop to Set's reawakening. Fortunately, the scroll provides 5 clues that'll help them locate it. But the clues are written in an ancient code that can only be deciphered by collecting small pottery pieces with letters called hieroglyphs.
But where can we find these mysterious hieroglyphs?
Hey, you're the ClueFinders, not me. But it shouldn't be too hard. Luckily, this is the Hieroglyph District. Everyone around here collects hieroglyphs.
After they successfully decipher all 5, they next head south of the Nile and arrive at the Nile Kingdom, where they find a large obelisk that they quickly deduce is the place of power. However, the palace entrance is blocked by 5 doors, and they need 12 special gems for each door in order to unlock them all and get inside. So now, they'll need to retrieve the special gems that were stolen by some mice, who are convinced they are ancient Egyptians, in order to get into the palace and finally put a stop to Lovelace's evil plan. Yes, I know that was a long synopsis, but I had to be sure I covered every beat. Anyhow, the game does a great job at building up on what the first game established, while also working well in doing its own thing. Like with the Mystery of Mathra, the Puzzle of the Pyramid does its own spin on a very common plotline. In this case, it's the typical world conquest plotline, where the main villain captures an important figure, in this case Professor Botch, and get him to disclose some information regarding an item or location key to the evil plan, and our heroes have to rescue them before the plan can be executed. And just like the first game, it does a good job at giving its own spin on the material. It starts off simple enough as just a normal trip to the unveiling of an uncovered tomb, but once the tomb is raided and the professor's kidnapped, that's when the plot kicks in, and it does not let up from there, from the various locations the gang go to the tasks they need to accomplish. One aspect that this game builds on from its predecessor are the stakes. As I talked about in part 2, the stakes in the Mystery of Mathra were more personal, as it involved Joni's uncle being kidnapped and needing to rescue him. Conversely, the puzzle of the pyramid raised them greatly, as it involves the reawakening of Set, who, as already stated, is the Egyptian embodiment of chaos and plans to conquer the world. That there alone gives the scenario a lot more urgency and need to stop the villain. The game also does an amazing job at establishing the mythology and lore behind Set, showcasing the city of Cairo and the various local businesses in it, as well as the characters the ClueFinders meet, how the mice down the Nile act like ancient Egyptians, and the tasks needed to help further progress the plot and mystery. On top of that, it both continues and expands on the sci-fi fantasy elements set up by the first game, although for this one, it leans a bit more into the latter. A good example of this is, spoiler alert here, so skip to this time arc if you want. When the ClueFinders eventually make it inside the Palace of Power, they are greeted by the other Egyptian gods and are granted special powers to aid in their final confrontation. Owen is granted flight, Leslie intelligence, Santiago super strength, and Joni bravery. Yes, it seems unfair that for Joni and Leslie, their powers are basically enhancements to their strongest character traits, but that isn't the case. They aren't sidelined during the final battle, and in fact, they all put their enhanced skills to good use. Also, the part where Loveless gets mummified is pretty funny.
Just a minute! You can't mummify me, Set! I am your master! I command you to...
Yes. I grow fatigued.
Speaking of, lest I forget, the game has a good amount of humorous moments, more fun character interactions, some clever quips, and little references that adults will pick up on more than kids.
I'm not a dude, I'm a mouse, see? And we're building a pyramid, one sentence at a time, see? And we could use some giants like you, yeah.
Where is the ring?
And what ring would that be?
You know what I'm talking about, Professor? The ring!
The ring? The ring?
Do not mock me, Professor!
Don't mock you.
Say, can't you tell us how to get through these tunnels?
I don't know about you, but the rest of my script is blank white paper.
You've just gotta love little self-referential bits like that. There's also one nifty callback to the first game.
Gotta get across that stretch of river. I guess we couldn't jump it, huh? Come on, that stuff's not gonna stop me.
Joni, be careful! The bridge
Ah!
is down.
Yuck!
For the main cast, they're mostly the same as they were before. However, this time around, they have one new addition. The group's mascot and Joni's dog, Socrates, who can speak telepathically. He seemingly doesn't add anything at first, but we'll talk more about him in the trivia section. However, that's not the only thing that's different. Unlike the first game and every other game afterwards, with the sole exceptions of the Real World Adventure Kit and Mystery Mansion Arcade, this game marks the only time the gang doesn't split up. Because of this, they don't use the red video phone. Instead, Socrates fills in the position of giving tips to the players. Another aspect that's done better is that we get more interactions with Leslie and Owen, and in turn, a better demonstration of their characters, with Leslie displaying her encyclopedic knowledge of the ancient world along with some of her vocabulary, and Owen being kind of a goof, but still proves to be pretty helpful.
Oh, Egyptian kings were always buried with spells of protection and other important writings. This one was hidden away from the other treasures, so it must be very important.
I've got a feeling the professor is in trouble.
We've gotta help him.
Next, we have the new game-exclusive characters. Professor Botch is the cheerful, enthusiastic Egyptologist the ClueFinders came to aid with the excavation of the tomb. He can come off as a bit of a goofball, but he is very knowledgeable about ancient Egypt and treats the artifacts with the utmost care.
This is astounding. Per-Absen was believed to be aligned with Set, the ancient Egyptian embodiment of chaos.
Then there's Ramses, the antique dealer who is reputedly 5,000 years old. He's pretty eccentric, but proves to be very helpful with translating the scroll for the gang and informing them of what they need to do.
Legend has it that the ancients built a mysterious place of power. Those worthy enough to enter would be granted the power needed to stop Set. This scroll has 5 clues that will guide you on your first step toward locating this place of power.
And last but not least of all, we have our main villain, Alistair Lovelace. And man oh man, talk about going in the total opposite direction. Recall that in The Mystery of Mathra, while Fletcher Limburger was the main villain of the game, he was more of a twist villain, as for much of it, he was shown as being mostly impartial, except for one small bit near the start.
City. And before he disappeared, he recorded the locations on a map in one of my programs.
But through the 2 clues provided during the quest, and once Joni and Santiago finally arrive at the Lost City, that's when his true colors and insidious motivations are revealed. Conversely, Lovelace just oozes evil, and the game makes that clear right out of the gate. From the moment this guy first appears on screen, he does not try to conceal his evilness one little bit. Heck, his own name spells out how evil he is. And it is absolutely glorious. The fact this guy loves to revel in the fact he's evil makes him quite entertaining to watch, especially during the cutscenes with Professor Botch. It also doesn't hurt that he's voiced by veteran Mario voice actor Charles Martinet.
You will do no such thing. Seize him!
Oh dear.
Nothing can stop me now, Professor. Not you, and not your meddling students. And now, we will begin the ceremony!
As for the citizens of Cairo, the Egyptian mice, and the other gods, they may not get a whole lot of screen time, and they don't exactly have strong personalities, but they do leave a good, memorable impression. Though it is pretty amusing these natives of Egypt are speaking with clearly American accents.
Cloth? Hello, this is fabric. It's gorgeous. I've had customers all over Cairo screaming for it.
Hey, you're right on time. I'm fixing up a master builder. This palace is going to be state-of-the-art. 10 floors, 50-car garage, 250-watt stereo system, an ancient Egyptian temple with all the modern amenities.
Speaking of the gods, let's touch upon them. The team did a nice job at making them otherworldly and imposing, as well as making the moment when they first appear feel grand and are given the proper amount of seriousness, but are also not afraid to have some fun with them. It's also pretty amusing to hear them speak with modern terminology.
We've been checking you kids out. You've got spunk.
I'm telling you, man, each of you has intense gifts within you.
Yeah, and since you've got a big battle with the forces of chaos coming up, we're going to enhance your gifts by giving you special powers.
Overall, the cast once again do a good job at making the game fun and help make for a pleasant playing experience. For the gameplay, it's structurally similar to The Mystery of Mathra, where the player goes around Cairo and the Nile Kingdom collecting the specific items, hieroglyphs and gems respectively, needed to further progress through the game. Also, the player has to do every task 5 times in order to get every hieroglyph and gem. Yes, this can make the gameplay redundant and repetitive, but this is a case where this kind of redundancy and repetitiveness works to the game's advantage. For one, Instead of just getting one of each item upon completing a task, the player can collect up to 3 items per round every time they complete the task once or twice in a row. Plus, each puzzle is changed up just enough to keep the game from feeling monotonous. One nice touch the team added for this game is randomizing the final clue. The game changes it out each time during different playthroughs, which helps add some replayability and ensures no one player gets the same clue. Also, here's a fun tidbit. If you have a sharp memory, you could skip the first half of the game and go straight to the Nile Kingdom.
Whoa! Dude, that rocked! This must be the place the antique dealer told us about.
Let's get in there and take the next step toward finding the professor.
Once more, the puzzles are fun and challenging, ranging from getting the correct amount of coffee, cutting the right amount of fabric, finding the correct locations on a map, getting the right directions, stacking up columns, finding the right words, etc, etc. Fun fact, the game adjusts the difficulty of the puzzles depending on how well the player is doing. Though, like the previous game, players can set the difficulty to how they see fit. For the educational aspect, like its predecessor, it integrates them in very well, and in areas that are pretty fitting. Finding the right fraction of fabric, building up the columns with the same fraction, figuring out the right amount of coffee through ASMD, building a sentence or word correctly, getting the right angle and trajectory, and I think you get the rest. The backgrounds do an amazing job at capturing the Egyptian atmosphere, from the architecture of Cairo, the Tomb of Parabsin, the vibrant and serene feel of the Nile Kingdom, which I do have to commend the team for not going with the usual arid desert feel, the mystical feel when inside the obelisk, and the scale of the inside of the pyramid. Oh, and before I forget, they also captured the ancient Egyptian feel quite well. One of the few touches they added is once the player gets to the palace, as they venture further inside after unlocking each door, you'll see different god etchings on the walls. Now that is a nice attention to detail. Okay, now it's time to talk about the one aspect I'm sure everybody caught right away, the character designs. Yes, their designs look radically different than in the first game, and no, I'm not referring to their wardrobes. Also, for whatever reason, Laptrap is more round and oval shaped. You may be asking, why do they look so radically different? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. The game had a different lead artist. See, said lead artist on the game, Doug Gray, brought up that his team couldn't do the characters in the realistic style. So they asked Nick Stern if it was alright to change it, to which he said he was okay with. I'll talk more about this in the trivia section. All of that being said, despite the changes made, the human characters still have a more realistic look, though they're not afraid to occasionally go a little wacky, while the mice in the Nile Kingdom are a lot more anthropomorphic and cartoonish, and the Egyptian gods have that fitting regal and imperial design. As for the character animation, like its predecessor, it's pretty good. It's smooth and retains a down-to-earth feel, and as already stated earlier, it can sometimes have some wacky, cartoonish moments, particularly with the mice. They also slip in some fun idling animations, like Owen pulling out a thing of food out of his pocket, and some subtle background animation, like the rippling water in the river at the Bridge of Crocodiles. All in all, the Puzzle of the Pyramid is another solid entry in the series that further builds on what the first game set up, while also having fun with doing its own thing, and it works very well as a good sequel. For trivia, like the previous game, this one was given a different name in the UK, which was, you guessed it, Years 4 and 5 Adventures. And of course, it was redubbed and the characters had their names changed. Now, on to more fascinating trivia, let's talk more about Socrates. Just where exactly did he come from, and how come he can speak telepathically? Well, the ClueFinders first met him while on an adventure to the island of Gabistan, which was inhabited by talking animals. And apparently, he, Socrates, was the only animal that couldn't speak at all. Well, that's definitely an interesting backstory there. Joni's backpack in this is different compared to how it was in the last game and all of the others afterwards, having it be a single compartment that opens and shuts with the latch instead of the usual zip style with 4 compartments, which does make sense as they're only collecting hieroglyphs and gems, so there's no need to have other compartments. Still though, it is pretty strange that it was changed for just this game. Voice actors J.S. Gilbert and Michael Bartle looked at Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. as inspirations for their voices of Sobek and Horace. You can definitely hear it in their voices, and I'm sure they were having a lot of fun with their performances.
Okay. We've been checking you kids out. You've got spunk.
I'm telling you, man, each of you has intense gifts within you.
Speaking of Bartle, he apparently caused some tension between himself and the voice directors. Why? Because he works not as a voice actor, but a voice impersonator. I'm guessing it was because he had gotten frustrated and indignant with the voice directors telling him how he should be doing the voice. Another fun bit, J.S. Gilbert recorded all of Horace's lines in just 15 minutes and got paid $800 for the role, which is really not too shabby for only 15 minutes of work. Now, backing up to the design changes, why was Nick Stern okay with the team changing it up? 2 reasons. Stern was good friends with Doug Gray and his team, and his thought process was that it was similar to the directors of the Looney Tunes, where you could tell who directed each cartoon based on a distinct style. Honestly, that's a pretty good way to explain it. Also, a couple of trivia bits I didn't bring up in part 2. The cast recorded several games in one session due to their scripts not being too big. They also had a lot of the same managers, so what they did was, and I'm not making any of this up, rent out a garage and use it to record during the weekends. This in turn resulted in several of them voicing characters in other TLC games. Another fun tidbit, if you look carefully on the scroll during the second cutscene, some of the symbols are the buttons of the PlayStation controller. Lastly, this game is where they debuted the ClueFinders theme music that will go on to be used for the rest of the series. That is, except for the first release of Math Adventures. When the ClueFinders arrived in Egypt over 6 months after rescuing the Numerian animals on July 13, 1998, they were able to put a stop to the forces of chaos. Critics gave the game great praise for once more striking a good balance of education and entertainment, the cutscenes for building up the excitement as well as being engaging, its cleverness, and that it excels at being a fun and entertaining adventure both kids and adults can enjoy. So, with all of that, plus the continued success of the Mystery of Mathra, it should come as no surprise that the game went on to do very well in sales. Unfortunately, the game didn't get much in the way of awards, but that's only because the first game was getting all of the awards that year. Oh well. The Puzzle of the Pyramid is a great follow-up to the Mystery of Mathra, with an engaging plot with high stakes, humor, effective integration of the educational elements, and it successfully expanded on the ClueFinders lore, world, and its characters. I hope that you all enjoyed part 3 and that it gave you some great insight into the history of this game. If you want to see more of the Lookback as it comes out, please leave a like on the video as well as subscribe to my channel, and be sure to comment your thoughts down below. What was it like playing the Puzzle of the Pyramid for the first time, and do you think it's better or lesser than the Mystery of Mathra? Next time, for part 4, we'll be leaving the pyramids of Egypt behind and head over to the Himalayas, as the ClueFinders uncover the mystery behind the thefts of some stolen treasures and another more famous monster.